If your family asked you to hand over every dollar you've saved, would you say yes? Or would you freeze like I did that night in Malibu? My name is Sophia. I'm 34. I've been working in financial consulting for over a decade, grinding, saving, watching every expense, building toward one dream. Opening my own firm, it wasn't glamorous. It wasn't a Hollywood script. It was spreadsheets at midnight, eating leftovers 3 nights in a row, saying no to vacations because every extra dollar went into that account. $70,000. That number became almost sacred to me. It was the ticket to independence, the proof that my sacrifices mattered. And then came that dinner. Picture it. A long oak table in my parents' house in Malibu. The air smelled of garlic bread and roasted chicken, candles flickered. It looked like a family celebration. Chloe, my younger sister, had flown in wearing a bright red blazer, her hair perfectly styled like she'd stepped out of a Netflix premiere. Mom poured wine, Dad made a toast. I thought, maybe they're proud of me. Maybe this dinner is about me finally reaching my goals. I couldn't have been more wrong. Halfway through the meal, Chloe cleared her throat. She pulled out a sleek laptop and clicked it open. A logo flashed on the screen. Some flashy name for an entertainment app. My parents leaned forward like investors on Shark Tank. Chloe launched into a pitch about revolutionizing how people stream indie films. She talked fast, her eyes bright, her hands sweeping through the air like she was unveiling the future. I glanced around, waiting for someone to laugh. This was family dinner, right? But no one laughed. They nodded. They clapped. Then Dad looked straight at me and said, "Sophia, Chloe's ready to take off. All she needs is a push. You can give her that push?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" Mom leaned in. "Your savings. You've got 70,000 sitting there. Imagine what that could do for your sister's dream." For a second, I thought I misheard. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. 70,000. The exact number I had been protecting like a lifeline. I laughed nervously, but their faces were serious. "You're joking, right?" I asked. Chloe shook her head, her smile unwavering. "You believe in me, don't you?" "You've always said family comes first." My stomach flipped. The roasted chicken on my plate suddenly tasted like ash. This wasn't a suggestion. It was a demand, dressed up as love. I tried to breathe, but the air felt heavy, like the whole room was waiting for me to say yes. "You've got to understand," Dad said firmly. "This is once in a lifetime. You can rebuild your savings. But Chloe, she has momentum. Don't let her lose it." Do you hear that? The subtle twist of guilt. The weight of expectation. The unspoken rule that the older child should sacrifice so the younger can shine. Have you ever felt that? That your role wasn't to live your life, but to bankroll someone else's? I wanted to shout. I wanted to slam the table. But instead, I sat there, my cheeks burning, my heart pounding like I'd been cornered. Chloe leaned closer. "You'll help me, right?" "Say yes." The candles flickered again, shadows dancing across the walls. I saw my reflection in the window, pale, stunned, smaller than I had ever felt. And in that moment, a question carved itself into my mind, sharp as a knife. What would you do if your family dropped a financial ultimatum in the middle of dinner? Because that's exactly what happened to me. The moment Chloe opened that laptop, the dining room transformed. The roasted chicken smell still hung in the air, but the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't a family dinner anymore. It was a boardroom pitch, and I was the reluctant investor trapped at the table. Chloe's voice filled the room, smooth, rehearsed, practiced. She had slides ready, yes, actual slides, about market share, potential revenue, even projections that made my parents' eyes sparkle. She clicked through them like she'd been waiting her whole life for this performance. "Imagine," she said, smiling, "an app where people can access indie films that never get picked up by the big studios. A place for creators to shine. She paused, letting the words hang like fireworks. Mom gasped softly, impressed. Dad leaned forward, nodding as though Chloe had just cracked the code to Hollywood itself. I stared at the screen. Numbers danced across it, bold arrows pointing up, phrases like projected growth and global reach. But underneath, I saw nothing concrete, no legal compliance, no intellectual property plan, no roadmap for sustaining cash flow. I cleared my throat. Chloe, do you have a license for distribution, contracts, even a lawyer's opinion? Her smile faltered. I'll figure it out. That's why I need the funding now, before someone else beats me to it. Before someone else? That phrase echoed in my ears. I knew desperation when I heard it. Dad cut in quickly, defensive. Sophia, don't be so negative. Every business starts somewhere, I nodded slowly. Yes, but every business also ends when it doesn't protect itself. Do you have security measures? Have you thought about piracy issues? Chloe rolled her eyes. You always do this. You bury everything in worst-case scenarios. You're too scared to dream? My chest tightened. Was I scared? Or was I simply the only one grounded in reality? Mom reached across the table, touching my hand as if soothing a child. Sweetheart, Chloe's different. She just needs support. You've always been strong, always reliable. This is your chance to lift her up, reliable, strong. Code words for sacrifice. The role I never auditioned for but was always cast in. Have you ever been painted as the villain just because you asked for logic? Because you demanded proof before handing over your entire future? The room turned against me. I felt it in their eyes, in their sighs, in the way my father folded his arms like a judge about to deliver a sentence. You're selfish, Dad said flatly. Your sister's dream is right in front of her. You'd rather hoard money than give her a chance? That word, selfish, burned. It wasn't a description, it was a weapon. Chloe's voice softened, almost pleading now. I'm your sister. I've always looked up to you. Don't let me down. And just like that, guilt was layered over insult, sweetened by false flattery. I wanted to shout, to demand why it was always me giving, never them. But then came the twist. Dad leaned back, his tone almost casual. You know, Sophia, this isn't the first time we've had to move money around for Chloe's future. Remember your college fund? Some of that was redirected years ago for Chloe's acting programs. It was an investment then, and this is the same now. For a second, I thought my heart stopped. My college fund? The nights I cried filling out scholarship applications, the endless part-time jobs, the ramen dinners so I could pay for books? Flash. Me at 19, huddled under a flickering lamp in the campus library, scribbling notes while my friends went out. Flash. Me washing dishes in a greasy diner at midnight, my hands raw and smelling of soap. Flash. Me signing student loan forms with trembling hands, knowing I'd be in debt for decades, and now I knew why. Because my fund had been siphoned for Chloe's dream. Do you understand that kind of betrayal? When your own sacrifices are revealed to be not accidents, but choices. Choices made by people who were supposed to protect you? The taste of garlic bread turned bitter in my mouth. My ears rang. I wanted to scream, but instead I sat frozen, my body a cage of fire and ice. I worked for every dollar, I whispered. And you took it? Mom's eyes filled with tears. We thought you'd manage. You're the strong one. That sentence broke something inside me. Being the strong one meant I was never allowed to be cared for. It meant my pain was invisible, my struggles irrelevant, because they assumed I could survive anything. But in that moment, survival felt like suffocation. Have you ever realized, in a single breath, that the story of your life wasn't what you thought? That the foundation you stood on had cracks you never saw? The pitch deck was still glowing on the laptop screen, bright and hollow. Chloe beamed as though nothing had just shattered. Mom cried. Dad frowned at me like I was the problem. And me? I sat in silence, holding back tears, fury, disbelief, all tangled in a knot so tight it felt like it would never loosen. I looked straight into Chloe's eyes and thought, you don't even know what you're asking for. You're not just asking for money. You're asking me to erase myself again. And I couldn't help but wonder, what would you do, sitting at that table, watching your own sacrifices dismissed as disposable? I didn't sleep the night after that dinner. I lay on my back staring at the ceiling, counting the slow circles of the fan like I was tracking time with a dull blade. Every few minutes I reached for my phone, opened my banking app, stared at the number that had taken me 10 years to build, and felt my throat tighten. You know that feeling when a place you love stops feeling safe? That was my parents' house. That was Los Angeles. By sunrise, I made the choice I'd been afraid to say out loud. I was leaving, not for the weekend, not to cool off. I was leaving to rebuild a life where my yes actually belonged to me. Packing felt like recovery. I folded blazers and flats into neat stacks, then stopped and tossed in my favorite hoodie because I knew I'd need softness too. The apartment was quiet except for the zipper of the suitcase and the staccato of my heart. I wrote a note to my landlord. I emailed HR to request a leave. I put my houseplant on the landing with a sticky note, free to a good home. I didn't announce it to my family, not yet. Confession. I was scared to hear the word selfish one more time. I booked a one-way ticket to Seattle. Why Seattle? Because the few times I'd visited for work, the city felt like a deep breath. The light was softer. The coffee tasted like a decision you could stand by. And rain, even the misty kind, makes people mind their own business. LAX was all bright announcements and rolling suitcases and perfume clouds, but inside I was strangely calm. I kept thinking, if you don't move now, when? A little girl in light-up sneakers ran past me, dragging a glittery backpack. She laughed out loud like it was the easiest thing in the world. I wanted that feeling again, not the glitter, the ease. On the plane, I pressed my forehead to the window and watched the Pacific turn from steel to cotton. Somewhere over Oregon, I wrote a list in my notes app. Find temporary housing, update resume, new phone plan, walk every morning. Spend only on essentials, remember to breathe. My hand steadied. Lists make fear smaller. Seattle greeted me with a silver sky and the smell of wet cedar. I dragged my suitcase down a narrow sidewalk to a small studio I'd rented sight unseen in Ballard. 500 square feet, a kitchenette, a tiny window that framed a brick wall with a lone, stubborn fern growing from a crack. It wasn't Malibu. It wasn't even stylish, but when I turned the deadbolt, the click sounded like permission. I unpacked one box and then stopped. I boiled water for tea, the kettle hissed. The radiator ticked awake. I stood barefoot on the cool wood floor and listened. The quiet had weight, but not the punishing kind. It was a quiet that made room. The next morning, I walked to a cafe near the ship canal. The barista wore a knit beanie and didn't rush me. People read actual books at the tables. I ordered a drip coffee and sat by the window, my hands wrapped around the mug like it was a small fire. You're here, I told myself. Now build. I started with basics. I opened a new email account. I updated my LinkedIn headline. I drafted a short message to a boutique firm I admired, Cascade Advisors, just to get the ball rolling. Then I closed the laptop and looked up, because I didn't move states to live inside a screen. Boats slid by in the rain, white hulls like commas in a long sentence. That's when I met Olivia. She asked, "Is anyone sitting here?" And I shook my head. She set down her tea and a notebook covered in sticker art. "You're new," she said, like it wasn't a question. I laughed. "That obvious?" She grinned. "The way you're holding that coffee says, fresh start. I know the look." We talked about neighborhoods, the Sunday market, which bakery had the best morning buns. She didn't ask why I'd moved. She didn't push. When she left, she said, "There's a community sailing center by the marina. Go sign up. Wind teaches you things." I didn't know what that meant, but I wrote it down. Days found a rhythm. Mornings, I walked along the locks and watched the gulls argue over nothing. Afternoons, I job hunted and built a budget that accounted for raincoats, bus fares, and courage. Evenings, I cooked simple meals and ate them slowly, at a table that didn't wobble because no one was shaking it with demands. I slept better. Not perfectly, but better. I kept my phone on silent, not forever, just long enough for my own voice to get louder than the chorus back home. Have you ever had to leave to be heard? Not to be dramatic, just to be audible to yourself. One rainy Saturday, I went to the sailing center. The instructor handed me a life jacket and said, "Rule 1, respect the wind." The water looked dark and impatient. We pushed off, and the boat pitched slightly, then steadied. My grip was too tight. The instructor smiled. "The trick is to feel the pull without fighting every inch. Adjust, don't panic." I swallowed a laugh. It sounded like advice for my whole life. That night I opened my laptop and felt something shift. I didn't write a resignation letter. I wrote a welcome back to myself letter. I listed strengths I'd downplayed for years: clear thinking under pressure, fluency in risk, the ability to say not yet and mean I value this more later. I saved it in a folder called Keep. Olivia texted me a photo of the sunset from Golden Gardens, lavender sky, a ferry slicing the horizon. "Come tomorrow," she wrote. "We'll eat fish and chips and not fix anyone's life." I stared at the line and smiled. Not fix anyone's life. What a relief to put that down. Of course, the fear didn't vanish. It showed up at 2 a.m. asking rude questions. What if you're wrong? What if leaving makes you the villain in everyone else's story? I got up, made chamomile tea, and answered out loud. "Then I'll be the villain who slept." Sometimes naming the fear takes its teeth. The job search moved faster than I expected. Cascade advisors replied to my message and asked for a conversation. They liked that I cared about financial education, not just sales. They asked about my philosophy. I said, "Clarity before velocity. We move fast only after we see the ground." The hiring manager laughed softly. "We should put that on a wall." When we hung up, I sat very still and let hope take the chair across from me. Small wins added up. I found a second-hand bicycle. I joined a Saturday morning book club where no one judged dog-eared pages. I discovered a bakery that put sea salt on their brownies, and I decided that was a sign life wanted me here. I took photos of puddles because the reflections made ordinary things look double. What they were and what they could be. One evening, the rain stopped right at dusk. The street glistened. I leaned out the window and breathed in petrichor, that fresh scent the earth releases after rain. Somewhere in the building, someone practiced piano, simple scales. I closed my eyes and let the notes ladder up my spine. For the first time in a long time, I felt not just safe, but possible. And yet, because there is always an and yet, I knew the story wasn't over. Quiet can be a prelude. Distance can be a mirror. I hadn't spoken to my parents. I hadn't spoken to Chloe. My inbox held newsletters and job leads, but also somewhere messages I wasn't ready to open. So I did what I could do tonight. I washed the dishes. I set out my shoes by the door. I charged my phone, still on silent. I wrote one line in my journal. I chose a life where my yes is mine. Then I added another line, smaller. I don't know what happens when I turn the sound back on. Have you ever had to walk away to be seen? Not to burn bridges, but to stop living under them. If you have, tell me how you knew it was time. Tell me what you did the first morning you woke up somewhere new. I'm listening. And I have a feeling I'll need your stories soon. Because the next chapter didn't wait politely, it knocked. Hard. The first week in Seattle taught me how to breathe again. The second week tested whether I meant it. The voicemail icons stacked up like red bricks on my screen, 6, then 8, then 12. I let them sit while the kettle hummed and the rain needled the window. When I finally pressed play, Chloe's voice came out small. Not the stage voice from Malibu, the other one, the one that shakes. Investors had backed out. The launch date moved. Cash burned faster than expected. Then Mom. Words tumbling over tears. Dad wasn't sleeping. The house felt tense. Bills, deadlines, please call, then Dad. Staccato sentences, the kind that come from pride cracking. It's bad. He didn't say he was sorry. He didn't have to. I could hear it. I put my phone face down. The room was quiet except for the tap of rain and the soft tick of the wall clock. This is where I would usually panic run, book a flight, wire money, patch the hole and pray the boat holds, but I didn't move. I walked to the sink, washed my mug, dried it with the good dish towel I bought on purpose, and said out loud, "We do this differently now." I called the hospital first. I needed facts. The nurse was kind. Dad had been admitted for observation, blood pressure, stress, no permanent damage. Discharge likely tomorrow, I thanked her. I exhaled. Next, I called a retirement recovery specialist in Chicago, then a mortgage attorney, then a therapist who works with families in crisis. I told each of them the same thing, clear, simple. I won't write a blank check. I will help them stand up. Words matter. How you frame help matters. By sunset, I had a list of options and names. I made a folder, family plan, and color-coded the steps, red for urgent, blue for legal, green for health. This is how I pray, with clarity. I sent one email to my parents and Chloe from my new address, short, precise. A meeting was booked with a financial advisor downtown Monday at 2. I would join by video. Please bring all documents, I wrote. Retirement statements, mortgage agreements, business contracts. We start there. I ended with one line that felt like a steel beam across a doorway. I will help within a structure. Mom called a minute later. I let it go to voicemail, listened to the flood of relief and apologies, and replied by text. Not ready for a call. See you Monday. Boundaries aren't barbed wire. They're guardrails, but you still have to install them. Monday came gray and cool. I set my laptop on the small table by the window. The meeting room popped up on screen. Polished wood, a glass pitcher of water, a box of tissues. My parents sat side by side. Dad looked tired but steady. Mom had a folded napkin in her hand like she was preparing to catch every falling thing. Chloe sat rigid, hands clasped, eyeliner drawn like armor. The advisor, Robert, began without flourishes. Numbers, not narratives. The retirement account had been raided. Early withdrawal penalties. A second mortgage with an ugly interest rate. The LLC paperwork for Chloe's app was incomplete, exposing my parents in places it shouldn't. His voice was calm, neutral. He wasn't there to shame. He was there to map the fire. I listened with my pen poised, but didn't add drama. When he finished, he looked at me on the screen. Miss Lee, you mentioned you have conditions if you're to participate in a rescue plan. The room shifted toward me. I could feel my mother's breath through the pixels. I took one more, long inhale, rain, cedar, the faint metallic scent of my radiator, and began. Condition 1, I said, voice level. My savings are not a family emergency fund. I will not hand over cash. Any involvement from me will be a formal loan documented by an attorney, interest at a modest rate, repayment schedule. Collateral if necessary. No surprises, no side agreements. Chloe flinched. Dad looked like he wanted to argue. I didn't fill the silence. I let the shape of the boundary stand there and cast a shadow. Condition 2, I continued. We hire a mortgage specialist this week to refinance the second mortgage into something sane, or we put the house on the market before the bank makes that decision for you. I love that house. But a house is not a hostage. Mom's eyes glassed. But that's our... I nodded gently. It's a home because you live there, not because the deed says your name. We fight smart, not sentimental. Condition 3, I said. Chloe gets a job, any job, hospitality, retail, admin, marketing assistant. Pride doesn't pay interest. A steady paycheck stabilizes the household. We revisit entrepreneurship later with a plan, not a pitch deck. What? Chloe's jaw worked. You don't believe in me, she whispered. I don't believe in rushing you off another cliff, I answered quietly. I believe in rebuilding your legs. Condition 4, therapy, all of us. Not as punishment, as repair, weekly, non-negotiable. We need a neutral room big enough to hold years of favoritism, silence, and the habit of calling responsibility selfishness. We don't get out of this without new language, Robert wrote while I spoke. The pen scratched like a tiny metronome. When I finished, the room was quiet in that heavy way where the truth has just edged out denial and everyone's eyes need a moment. Dad cleared his throat. And if we say no... I kept my face open. Then you follow one of Robert's other paths, sell. Restructure without me. Consider bankruptcy protection. I will still love you. I will still answer your calls, but I won't be your credit line. Mom pressed the napkin to her mouth. Chloe stared at the table. Robert slid 3 printed options across to them, each with bullet points and timelines. I watched their faces learn. The learning was not pretty. It rarely is. We took a 5-minute break. I stood up, stretched my back, and walked to the window. A gull landed on the fire escape and tilted its head at me like it had a question it already knew the answer to. I whispered, "Yes, I'm sure." Back on the call, Dad surprised me. His voice softened in a way I hadn't heard since I was little and had a fever, and he brought orange popsicles home. I said things I shouldn't have, he murmured. About you, about your work, about your future being less important. I was wrong. The apology didn't rewrite history. It didn't need to. It opened a door. Mom followed, words thick with old grief. We leaned on you because you could carry it, she said. We thought we were protecting Chloe. We weren't. We were breaking both of you in different ways. Chloe lifted her face. The armor had slipped a bit. I'll get a job this week, she said. I'll show up. It wasn't a vow. It was the first honest sentence I'd heard from her in months. Honesty is a rope you can pull on. We set the plan. This week. List the house with a refinance or sell decision date circled in red. Appointment with a mortgage specialist Thursday. Therapist intake Friday. Chloe's job search starting now, with accountability check-ins every Sunday night. My role, draft the loan terms with the attorney Robert recommended, wire the first protective tranche only after the documents were signed, and help rebuild a budget that respected reality. Before we adjourn, I said, I want to say one thing clearly. I leaned closer to the camera. I am not abandoning you. I am ending the version of us that treats my boundaries like inconveniences. That is the only way we get a future that doesn't look like the past. No one argued. Even silence can agree. When the meeting closed, I didn't crumble. I didn't need to. I sat there and felt the city around me. Bus brakes, distant seagulls, the faint clatter of someone dropping a pan upstairs, and realized the internal noise had finally turned down. I made tea. I wrote the next steps on an index card and taped it to my wall. Loan draft, mortgage call, therapist intake, Sunday check-in, infrastructure, not improvisation. That night I slept. Not perfectly. But when I woke at 3 a.m., my heart wasn't sprinting. I rolled over and whispered my own condition, the one I'd hidden even from myself. First condition, no one touches my savings. Saying it out loud didn't make me hard, it made me honest. If you're watching this and your family is in flames, hear me. Help doesn't always mean pay. Sometimes it means plan. Sometimes the kindest word is no, because no is the only word sturdy enough to hold a better yes later. If that resonates, tell me in the comments what your first condition would be. I read them, I learn from them. We build stronger together. The week after the meeting, Seattle softened. The rain didn't feel like needles anymore. It felt like a soundtrack. My index card of action items hung on the wall, corners curling slightly from the damp. I checked boxes, mortgage call, therapist intake. Chloe's Sunday check-in, every step clicked into place like teeth on a zipper. For the first time in months, my nervous system learned the shape of steady. Then Monday morning bit back. It started with a ping I didn't recognize. Not the gentle calendar chime. Not Olivia's coffee text tone. This one was metallic, urgent, a sound I'd set long ago for news mentions and forgotten to mute. I was buttering toast. The knife paused midair. Another ping, then 3 more. My phone lit up like a slot machine. A headline sat on my lock screen, sharp as glass. Indie streaming startup collapses. Inside the family drama behind the scenes. My mouth dried out. Behind the scenes? Which scenes? Whose family? I unlocked the phone with a thumb that suddenly felt clumsy. The article was breathless in that way gossip writers confuse with journalism. It name-checked Chloe, framed her as a bold creative stifled by internal disagreements, and, buried in paragraph 5, referred to a cautious older sister who refused to greenlight crucial funding. No name. Just enough detail to make anyone who knew us nod slowly and say, "Ah, I scrolled." There it was, an embedded tweet from a minor entertainment blogger. Sad to see promising women founders kneecapped by family gatekeepers. A string of clapping hands, a broken heart emoji. The comments multiplied like mold. My toast went cold on the plate. The apartment seemed to tilt. I put the phone down and picked it back up because who sets the phone down when their life is being misfiled in public? The pings didn't stop. LinkedIn, Instagram, email. Messages from college friends I adored and colleagues I respected. "Hey, are you okay?" Seeing weird rumors. "Please tell me that article is leaving out context." "You didn't actually block your sister's career, right?" And then my favorite, from someone who'd asked me for a resume reference 2 weeks ago. "If you had invested, this might have worked. Do you regret it?" Regret? I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. Regret that I didn't set my future on fire. Regret that I didn't erase a decade of discipline because someone else's timeline screamed now. I did what I always do when panic rattles the dishes. I moved my body. I washed the plate. I opened the window. Seattle air rolled in, wet and clean. My hands were steady by the time I sat at the table with my laptop. Calm first, then decisions. A DM from Chloe blinked at the top of my inbox. I clicked. 4 sentences. "I did an interview. I kept it vague. You weren't named. People are just filling in blanks. Don't overreact. Vague, blanks, overreact." The words hung like fruit flies you can't swat. I typed and erased a dozen replies. Nothing I wrote made the hot edge inside me any less sharp. I closed the window and texted Olivia, "Emergency walk?" She answered in 30 seconds. "Golden Gardens in 20. Bring your angry shoes." The beach was all slate and silver, gulls shouting like they owned the sky. I walked until my breath matched the water. Olivia didn't ask. She handed me a paper cup of tea and waited. When I finished, she whistled low. "So, a pile-on without facts. It's not just noise," I said. "Clients read this stuff." Reputations travel faster than corrections. "If I'm the villain, that has a cost," she said. "So what are the stakes?" "Name them out loud." I stared at the line where the sound met the sky. My work, my future firm, my credibility. And not just external. The voice in my head that I finally convinced to trust me, she nodded. "And what story do you not want to live in?" "The one where my silence equals admission." Olivia tossed a pebble into the water. Then don't be silent, I breathed through my teeth. If I clap back impulsively, I become exactly what they're painting, bitter, punitive. If I say nothing, they write me in as the villain who starved a dream. I need a third door. Truth, she said simply, measured, documented, on your terms. My phone buzzed again against my palm. I didn't look. Olivia frowned. Open it. I did. Chloe had posted a story. A boomerang of her coffee cup with a caption, "Sometimes the help you were promised disappears when you need it most." A heart emoji, a dagger. The comments came fast, then faster. At Movie Maven, families can be the worst. At Big Betty 76, if my sister did that to me, I'd never speak to her again. At Finance Guy Real, older siblings hoard opportunities. It's a thing. At Soft Saltson, maybe there's more to it. We don't know the facts. At Chloe_Stan, we don't need facts to see jealousy. Pattern interrupt, right there, on my own screen. The chorus of strangers who think jealousy is a skeleton key. Insert it, twist, and the lock opens with a story that flatters the dreamer and flattens the skeptic. I texted Chloe, "Take it down, now." She replied with 3 dots that lingered, then, "It's not about you. It's about how hard this is, not about me." The line was so slippery I could have skated on it. I called instead of typing. She picked up. "What?" she said, voice brittle. "You just implied I promised money." "You know that's not true." "I implied nothing. People read what they want, Chloe." I kept my tone level. "We agreed on terms in writing. We agreed on therapy. We agreed on you getting a job. This..." I swallowed. "This undermines all of it." She exhaled into the phone like a storm down a straw. "You care more about your image than my future?" I closed my eyes. "I care about the difference between help and enablement. I care about not becoming an ATM with a face." Silence. Then the click of a quiet hang-up. I stood there at the water's edge, the wind slapping hair across my mouth, and said to Olivia, "I think I have to say something. Not a subtweet, not a cryptic quote. A clean line. My story, with receipts." Olivia nodded. "You don't owe the internet your diary, but you can refuse the lie." Back home, I opened a blank document. The cursor pulsed like a heartbeat. I drafted a simple statement. No adjectives, no dragging. Just facts. The ask for $70,000. The discovery about my college fund. The meeting with the advisor. The conditions set. The plan agreed upon. My commitment to help within a legal structure. I read it out loud. Then I trimmed it again. Truth gets stronger when you cut away the courtroom. Before I could decide where to post it, or if I should, my phone rang with a number I recognized from a past client. I hesitated, then answered. "Hey, Sophia," she said gently. "I saw the article. I don't believe it. I've worked with you. You're the rare one who says no when the math is wrong. Listen, if you decide to address it, do it on your platform. Don't feed theirs." I felt something unknot. "Thank you," I said. "I've got your back," she replied. "And if anyone asks, I'll say the quiet part loud. Responsible boundaries are not sabotage." After we hung up, I opened my messages from friends. Most were kind, a few were cautious. One stung. Maybe there's a middle ground? Couldn't you have given her something to show faith? I typed, erased, and typed again. Faith without a plan is debt cosplaying as love. I didn't send it. Not yet. I would save that sentence for myself. By evening, the story had mutated. A YouTube commentator did a 6-minute segment titled, "When Family Becomes Your First Hater." The thumbnail was a stock photo of 2 women back to back, arms crossed, lighting made to look like lightning. He guessed at details and got almost all of them wrong, right down to calling me Sabrina. I wanted to be offended. Mostly I was tired. I took a walk. The sky was a bruise fading at the edges. In a shop window, muted TVs played a different news cycle: weather, sports, a city council vote. The world was large enough to hold my drama and ignore it at the same time. Somehow that helped. When I got home, I opened my journal and wrote the stakes again, in ink this time. Work, credibility, future clients, my own voice. Then I drew a line beneath it and wrote my choices: silence, spite, truth. I turned to the last page and left it blank. Not because I didn't know what came next, but because I wanted space to choose it with intention. Sometimes the most adult thing you can do is wait one beat longer than your anger. I know some of you are screaming, "Clap back now." Some of you are whispering, "Stay above it." Here's what I know. If a lie is loud and you whisper the truth will drown. If a lie is loud and you scream, you might become the show. I wanted a third way, the one Olivia named, measured, documented, on my terms, so I poured tea. I turned off notifications. I set my alarm for early, and I drafted a plan that did not beg for belief, but offered clarity to anyone who wanted it. Tomorrow, I would step into my own light and tell my story the way it happened, built from the ground up, with timelines, documents, and the calm of someone who knows she did not fail, she chose. If you've ever had your name bent in public, if you've ever watched strangers spit theories into the engine of your life, tell me in the comments, what helped you keep your center? I'm listening. I think a lot of people watching this need your words tonight as much as mine. I woke up before the sun, like truth does, quiet, patient. Waiting to be chosen, I made tea, I opened the blinds. Seattle was a sheet of brushed steel. I set my laptop on the table, the same table where I drafted boundaries and budgets, and I said to myself, clarity before velocity. If you've ever been misnamed in public, you know this part. Your pulse says fight. Your pride says vanish. But the adult choice sits somewhere in the middle. Show up with facts. I wrote 3 lines at the top of a blank document. Timeline, documents, decisions. Underneath, 4 headers. The ask, the discovery, the meeting, the conditions, no adjectives, no daggers. I pulled receipts into a neat folder on my desktop, email screenshots, the advisor's recap letter, the draft loan terms. I redacted account numbers. I added timestamps. Truth, but with seatbelts, I clicked go live. For 3 seconds, the screen showed my face and my kitchen wall clock, and I thought, this is ridiculous. Then the chat counter jumped. 23, 61, 118, 340. People you love. People you barely know. People who only know the shape of your name from rumors. All of them, waiting. Good morning, I said, keeping my voice low. I'm Sophia. Some of you think I'm Sabrina. Either way, I'm the older sister in a story that's been told without the middle pages. I'm here to add them. The first comment raced by. We're listening, then. Finally, then. Be kind, but be clear. Here's what happened, I began. 6 months ago, at a family dinner, I was asked to hand over my entire savings, $70,000, to fund my younger sister's app. That number wasn't random. It was 10 years of my life in a bowl. I said no, not because I don't love my sister. Because I love my future. I held up my palms. No papers yet, no screen shares, just my face. You can disagree with my decision. You can dislike my timing. But please hear this next part fully. I clicked to the first slide, the ask. 2 bullet points, black on white. Amount requested, $70,000. Timeline, immediate. The date of the dinner. The follow-up text from Dad, let's make this happen fast. Chat, whoa. That's not a small favor. Immense pressure. Next, I said, I discovered something that shifted the ground. Years ago, money from my college fund was taken to pay for acting programs for my sister. I learned that at the same dinner. I clicked the discovery, a scanned ledger line, an old email from Mom referencing reallocating education funds, redacted balances, dates. Comments jumped. I feel sick. That's theft. Parents sometimes choose the child they think needs more. It still hurts. This isn't about punishing anyone, I said. It's about accurately naming what happened so we can stop repeating it. I moved to the meeting. The advisor's letter appeared, names blurred except ours. We sat with a professional, I said. We looked at retirement penalties, a second mortgage, incomplete LLC paperwork. It wasn't a villain edit. It was a map of fire. Chat. Thank you for not dragging. Numbers over narratives. Been there. Parents mortgaged the house for my brother's bar. And then, I said, I offered help, but I defined help. I clicked to the conditions. 4 short lines. Formal loan, attorney drafted, modest interest, schedule, collateral. Mortgage strategy, refinance or sell, house is not a hostage. Job for Chloe, steady paycheck, rebuild legs. Therapy, weekly, all of us, not punishment, repair. I read each one slowly, then looked into the camera. If you expected a sister-shaped ATM, this will sound cruel. If you've lived through enabling, this will sound like love with a spine. The chat flooded, love with a spine. Stealing this phrase, boundaries not equal to betrayal. Here are the documents, I said, and shared the screen. Cropped, clean, no doxable details. The loan draft with my signature line blank. The therapist intake emails with appointment dates. A calendar reminder titled, Chloe, Sunday check-in. I paused and let the quiet be a witness. You know how rare quiet is online? It has a temperature. It feels like a room where people are leaning in, not lunging forward. Then I said the line I'd rehearsed in my head and in my chest. Do you believe this? I didn't say it as a challenge. I said it as a handshake. Do you believe a woman can love her family and refuse to bankrupt her future? Do you believe both can be true? The comments shifted tone. Some hearts, some long stories. One viewer wrote, my sister and I haven't spoken in 2 years because I said no to a similar ask. Thank you for making me feel less monstrous. Another said, I'm Chloe and my family. I needed to hear the word job without shame. I added one more layer, context for the public mess. This week, an article implied I kneecapped my sister. She followed with a post about promises disappearing. Here's the promise I made and kept. I will help within a structure. I haven't rescinded that, I have enforced it. A few comments turned sharp, as they always do. Why not give something to show faith? Couldn't you spot her $5,000? Here's why I didn't, I said. Because a little becomes a pattern. Because gestures without a plan become receipts for later guilt. Because my yes means nothing if it's always available under pressure. I switched off the screen share and let it be just me again. I want to be very clear about Chloe, I said. She is talented. She is resilient. She is also learning the difference between urgency and readiness. I'm learning to stop confusing quiet with consent. Both of us are in school. Then, a ping I didn't expect. Chloe in the chat, a small gray circle. I didn't think your college fun bit would go this public. The world tilted for a half second. I breathed. Chloe, I said softly. You're here. Thank you. This is public because the story went public. If you want to add context, I'll listen. The dots appeared, vanished, appeared. She wrote, I was angry. I wanted someone to blame. I thought you'd heal faster than me. That's on me. The chat froze, then bloomed. Accountability. This is big. Sisters, please be gentle. I'm not here to pin you to a wall, I said. I'm here to build one strong enough to lean on. Do you still have Sunday check-ins on your calendar? Yes. Have you applied to the 3 roles we discussed? 2. Working on the 3rd. Okay, I said. That's forward. Forward is a direction I can fund. I could feel thousands of people exhaling at once. It's a strange sensation, like wind through a keyhole. I wanted to end right there, on the rare internet moment where truth and tenderness occupied the same square inch. But I had one last responsibility to the people watching who needed a script for their own living rooms. If you're dealing with a family ask that feels like an ambush, I said, here are the steps that saved me. 1. Buy time. Don't answer on the spot. Say, I need to look at the numbers. 2. Move the conversation to documents. If it can't be put in writing, don't put it on your back. 3. Define your help. Loan, not gift. Plan, not hope. 4. Add a human repair layer. Therapy, mediator, elder you both respect. And 5. Name the love out loud. It calms defensiveness. It keeps you human to each other. Chat, screenshotted. Putting this on my fridge. My mom is in the other room. I'm going to show her this part. I ended with what I started with. Clarity before velocity, I said. We won't outrun our patterns by sprinting. We'll outgrow them by telling the truth early and often. I could have clicked out there, but I wanted to leave an open door. Not for chaos, for conversation. If you've been the Chloe, tell us what helped you feel supported without being rescued. If you've been the Sophia, tell us what boundary you wish you'd set earlier. Drop it in the comments. I read them, I learned from them, and maybe, just maybe, someone watching will borrow your sentence tonight. The chat poured in gratitude, complicated love. A few trolls, of course, but they bounced off the tone like pebbles off a window. I thanked everyone for their time, promised an update after our next Sunday check-in, and ended the stream with a steady hand. When the screen went dark, the apartment came back, kettle, clock, rain. I stood there and let the quiet land, not triumph, not gloating, just relief with roots. If you've ever told the truth and felt your lungs make more room, you know. It feels like standing up from a crouch you didn't realize had become permanent. I texted Olivia one line. Done, clean, kind. She replied, proud of you, proud of the receipts. Then I did the smallest, most radical thing. I ate breakfast while it was still hot. Butter melted into toast, and I didn't check my phone, not for 5 whole minutes. That's what peace looks like sometimes. Warm bread and no buzzing. If any part of this helped you take back your voice, tell me below. Your comment might become someone else's map out of a maze they didn't build. And if you're in the middle of a storm right now, borrow my line until you find your own. I will help, within a structure. After the live stream, quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. The comments kept blooming for hours. Stories from nurses, teachers, new parents, older brothers, only children. People told me what they said no to, what they said yes to after. I read until the words blurred and still didn't feel alone. That's the thing about truth. Once it's said out loud, it finds its relatives. Sunday came fast, the check-in. I brewed coffee the way I like it, dark, a little stubborn, and straightened the index card on the wall. Loan draft, mortgage call, therapist intake, Sunday check-in. The list no longer looked like a cliff. It looked like steps. At 2, the screen filled with faces. Mom first, her hair pulled back like she'd been cleaning. Dad in a cardigan I hadn't seen since I was in high school. The one with the elbow patches that made him look like an apology. Chloe, bare-faced, no armor eyeliner, which sent a quiet message all its own. We exchanged soft hellos. No one mentioned the stream. That felt right. It wasn't a stage for us. It was a bridge. Now we had to cross it. I started small. How's the house? Dad rubbed his jaw. We met the mortgage specialist. Refinance is possible, but the rate isn't kind. He cleared his throat. We're speaking to a realtor tomorrow, just to know our options. Mom's gaze drifted, like she was looking at the kitchen walls and trying to memorize them. I took photos, she said shyly. Just in case. I nodded. Good. Knowing doesn't force anything, it prepares you. Chloe jumped in, surprising me. I had 2 interviews, she said. One at a production company, one for a receptionist job at a clinic near the studio. The clinic called back. She laughed once, tight. It's not glamorous. Glamorous isn't the goal, I said. Steady is. She rolled the word in her mouth like a lozenge. Steady, she repeated. I can do steady. We moved to the therapist intake. Mom had scheduled it. That alone made something behind my ribs unclench. Dad said he'd go. He didn't say it like a favor. He said it like a fact. Then, without planning it, I took a breath and turned to face the one piece we always slid past. I want to say something about the college fund, I said, not to punish, not to open a wound for the sensation. I need us to name it together. Mom's fingers worried the edge of a napkin. We were scared, she said, voice small. Scared Chloe would get left behind. Scared you'd be fine, because you always looked fine. I thought about the late-night diner shift, the textbook swollen with rain because I'd walked too fast between bus stops. I wasn't fine, I said gently. I learned how to look fine so you would stop asking me to be more fine. Dad stared at the table and then at me. I told myself I was choosing wisely, he said. Really, I was choosing loudly. Whoever sounded urgent got the help. That sentence landed like a key. Urgency had been our god. It got offerings, it got the calendar, it got the cash. Quiet competence? Quiet competence got thanked and assigned more weight. Chloe blinked hard. I didn't want to take from you, she said. I wanted to be worth what was already taken. That's not the same thing. No, I said. It isn't, but I hear the ache in it. Silence then, the good kind. The kind that lets a truth cool so it can be handled without burning your hands. We moved into logistics. I shared the loan document again, clean and clear. Dad asked 3 practical questions. Mom asked if the interest could be a hair lower. I said yes, and felt the strange lift of generosity that comes when you're not being coerced. Chloe offered to sign a separate acknowledgement of responsibility. I didn't ask for it. She wanted to. That mattered. When we ended the call, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt aligned. There's a difference. Triumph demands a witness. Alignment lets you do dishes with quiet satisfaction. I did 2 plates and a pan and caught my reflection in the kitchen window. I looked like someone I would hire. Calm eyes, shoulders not up around my ears, mouth not pinched from swallowing words. The week unfolded in squares on a calendar. Mom sent photos of a for-sale flyer draft. Just preparation, she reminded me. Dad texted me a snapshot of a notebook page where he'd written, pensions, ask about survivor benefits. Chloe sent a selfie outside the clinic in a navy polo. First day wish me grace. I replied, you've got it, and boundaries. Therapy began on Friday. The first session was messy. Words spilled that had been kept in jars for years. We practiced not labeling each other. We practiced naming behaviors, not character. When I said, when you call me selfish for asking questions, I shut down, Mom didn't argue. She nodded and wrote it down. The therapist, her name was Carmen, warm eyes, steady hands, smiled at that small, enormous action. Write down the truths you want to remember, she said. In crisis, we forget our own sentences. Pattern interrupt, right there, Carmen handing us pens, not a lecture, a tool. We left with a 3-line script. We are a team. We speak in specifics. We pause before guilt. It felt corny written on an index card. It felt like oxygen when we used it. I won't paint it like a montage where we laughed over pancakes and every old hurt turned to confetti. It wasn't. Boundaries aren't an aesthetic. They're practice. There were stumbles. Mom texted me a long, late message one night stacking, after all we've done for you with, could you just? I didn't fire back. I slept. In the morning, I called and said, let's circle to the plan. She sighed, fought the reflex, and circled. That's growth. When the new habit arrives, one beats sooner than the old one. The realtor meeting came. The house didn't list, not yet. But the refinance path became clearer. Dad asked if we could make peace with the worst-case scenario. If we do have to sell, he said. Can we call it a decision, not a defeat? I told him that words matter, and he grinned like he'd stolen my thesis. And Chloe? She worked. She got blisters the first week from cheap flats. She sent me a photo of her bandaged heel with the caption, "Pain of Progress." She came home too tired to doom scroll. Her posts slowed, her tone softened. On a Sunday call, she said, unprompted, "The people at the clinic show up like it matters." I think I'm learning how to show up like that too. 2 weeks after the live stream, I walked by the Ballard Locks and watched a boat move from one water level to another. The gates closed, water filled. The boat rose. Nothing about the boat changed. Everything around it did. That image lodged itself behind my eyes. Maybe this was us. Not a new family. A family in a new pool. That night I drafted the final loan document with the adjusted interest. I sent it to the attorney and blind copied Robert. We scheduled signatures. I slept. In the morning, I woke to a short email from Dad. Proud of us. Not proud of luck. Proud of work. He'd attached a photo of his old cardigan with the elbow patches. "For your Seattle winters," he wrote. I laughed out loud. The sweater would smell like cedar and thyme. I hoped it also smelled like repair. I kept my own life moving. Cascade Advisors asked me to lead a pilot workshop on budgeting for creatives. The full circle of that didn't miss me. I started with a slide that said, "Love your craft, respect your cash." I told them what I'd told you, clarity before velocity. The room hummed the way rooms do when the line lands. Afterward, a woman my age said, "I'm the Chloe at home. I'm also the Sophia at work." I didn't know I could be both. I told her, "You can be both as long as you are honest in both rooms." We had a final family session of the month with Carmen. She asked each of us to name the sentence we were taking into the next 30 days. Mom said, "I will not bribe peace with money." Dad said, "Urgency is not wisdom." Chloe looked at me and said, "I will earn trust with consistency, not announcements." I felt my throat go tight. I said, "I will help within a structure." We all smiled because it was the same sentence that started the turning. Closure doesn't mean a door slams and never opens again. It means the hinges stop squealing every time someone passes through. Weeks went by with fewer squeals, fewer articles, fewer strangers in our living room. When the old ache visited, it didn't move in. It knocked, we noted it, and we kept making dinner. I wish I could give you a film-perfect ending, a ribbon, a toast. Maybe that exists somewhere. But truth looks more like this. A Sunday afternoon where the house is cleaner than it used to be, the bills are organized, Chloe's shoes are better padded, Dad's blood pressure reads like a hopeful chart. Mom keeps that index card on the fridge and points to it when the past gets loud. And me? I water my plant, answer client emails, ride the late ferry just to watch the city turn to coins on the water, and go to bed knowing my yes belongs to me. If you've walked this far with me, thank you. If you're somewhere between anger and repair, take this with you. Love without boundaries becomes resentment. Truth without kindness becomes shrapnel. We're learning the middle where love has a spine and kindness has a plan. Tell me in the comments, what sentence will you carry into your next month? Maybe it's mine, maybe it's yours. Either way, write it down, tape it to the fridge. Whisper it to yourself before the next hard conversation. And if this story helped you see your own more clearly, share it with the person who needs to hear, you're not selfish. You're building something sturdy.